Welcome back to another episode of Spiritual Teachers Podcast. With me today is Luke Bricker. Luke is a minister in inner spiritual and interfaith mystic teachings. Their slogan is a spiritual home for Christ-centered mystics. It's such an honor to have you on today, Luke. Welcome on, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a true. I'm really excited for today's podcast. There's a lot of really interesting topics we're going to talk about. We're going to start with Luke's awakening journey. Then we'll talk about Christ and Christ consciousness. We'll also talk about the life Jesus led from age 13 to 30, which a lot of people don't know about. And then we'll talk about potentially entity attachments and exorcisms, and we may do a part two depending on what we get through today. So I'm really excited, man. So would you be open to sharing how everything started for you with your awakening journey?
Yeah, man. Yeah, and just yeah, honored to be here and happy to share and love to see where it'll unfold, It's
For
so
sure,
good.
for sure.
Yeah, man. So I'm a pastor's kid. Grew up, my dad was we call it church planting, but starting churches. Grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana. I was born in Miami, Florida. He started a church there. We moved to Indianapolis, and yeah, it was a PK, but not a normal sort of PK. I had a very chill upbringing, actually, compared to a lot of my peers, and you know, had a lot of just freedom. Great experience with that. My dad was a mega church pastor, meaning our church was really large, very attractional. At our largest, we had 6 services on the weekends, on
Wow.
Saturdays and Sundays. Yeah, it was big church, 90s, 2000s. And so we actually, luckily, there was kind of a rule in the house that our family could only come to one service because my dad didn't want us getting burned out. So I appreciate that.
That's
The,
yeah, I could see how you could easily burn out by going to 6 services a weekend, man.
Definitely. And I spent most of the time for the other services just like smoking in the back and skating and doing other stuff. But that's just kind of the name of the PK game, you know what I'm saying? So,
And
and
PK is a pastor's kid. That's like a
pastor's
term.
kid.
Okay.
Yeah. I should clarify pastor's kid, which has, for people that are in the know, there's a whole like little fun stigma about it, just like they're either way goody two shoes or they're way on the other end. And I was way on the other end.
Right. Sounds
So
like it.
yeah, man. And so grew up in that environment with some freedom and things. In my teen years was played drums in death metal bands and just went that whole route. Wasn't really interested in what my dad was doing. Also didn't like that everywhere I went, I felt like I was known and under the microscope. So people be telling on me for like smoking a bowl by the mall, or whatever.
Right.
I'd always be in trouble because like everybody kind of knew my dad in this, church platform.
Right. Right.
And so whenever I was, a little older though, I was 20, I was working at FedEx at the airport back in Indianapolis. And then now my now wife, we were talking about getting married and I got married really young. So we ended up getting married just a couple months before I turned 21. So I was 20, she was 20 when we got married.
How old are
And
you now?
I'm 35. I'll be 36 in November. So coming up on that.
Wow. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome, man.
15 years next month we'll be married. So we've
Wow.
been together now. We started dating at 17. So we've been together for more of our life than apart. So pretty
Wow.
wild. Yeah,
That's
which
that's powerful, man.
a lot could be said about spiritual awakening and relationship, stuff, but that's probably another podcast.
Right.
Um, but to come to the awakening part of it, at 20, I um, decided that I was feeling this call towards a ministry pull, which I didn't feel beforehand. I was very anti going that route. I wanted to do other things, wanted to go on tour, wanted to play music and all this stuff. Then I started to feel this draw and call by the spirit to maybe do something like that.
What
Uh,
was it? What was it? Was it like a dream you had, or what kind of started shifting that?
yeah, dude, I think honestly, like I what a lot of it comes down to, I think, for many of us is we all hit this point in our life, I think different points in our life that we're really searching for meaning.
Hmm.
And there comes these like, really dry seasons of our life. And all of the things that we thought were going to happen weren't. And things on the other end too. And you then start to in some way have some sort of existential, crisis, or even just a reflection of like kind of the big philosophical who am I and what am I doing here kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I realized I'd been working, just sort of throwing boxes around, and my band kind of fizzled out and nothing was really happening. And just kind of, there's only so many like things you can do to pass time, before if you have a sensitivity to the spirit like that, there's you're going to be, called into some vocation, I think, because the world is fragmented, and it's calling people to be healers for the fragmented world. And so you don't get a pass if you have that sort of awareness. Everybody's enlisted in this, healing of self and other, so I think what specifically that call was like, I was driving this little, they call them tugs. I was at work at the airport, and I was driving this little thing around with a baggage cart. And I don't know, it just was like a lightning bolt out of nowhere. I just got hit with this flood of emotion. And I grew up again, like in the church, more charismatic church environment. And so we were sensitive to the Holy Spirit. And whenever I was really young, I felt for the first time what that experience was like, to sense the presence of the Holy Spirit tingling from head to toe of my body, and this sort of light sensation in terms of like physical lightness, but also in terms of like just a brightness. And that hadn't happened in so many years. And that just hit me while I was on the clock of just like, and I just started weeping in my little tug thing, and just felt like there was something that was wanting to be curated through this incarnation that is me, that there's something else that's tugging on
Hmm.
me.
Hmm.
And so the only framework that I had at that time, is coming from an evangelical background, was to do some sort of like ministry school or maybe pastoral vocation or something like that.
Hmm.
And so my wife and I went to this Christian program, to, do some ministry training and things. We got married and went to Orlando, Florida for that for a bit. And it was in Orlando that I was introduced to some people who were very rigid, I would say now Christians,
Hmm.
that at the time, coming from the underground hardcore music scene or whatever, they introduced me to some of these preachers and pastors that were very fiery,
Hmm.
that were very, line in the sand, exclusive. This is Jesus, this isn't. And
Hmm.
to me, it just, the particular individual was a preacher named Mark Driscoll from Seattle, Washington. And he had these churches, and he was a very divisive sort of figure, but he almost resembled like a hardcore front man, vocalist, like his
Right.
preaching was like, let's open this pit kind of thing.
Right, dude. Yeah, I feel that a lot. I feel that a lot. They're kind of like the lead singers of the band for sure.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And my dad was very, you know, very, very like business CEO kind of pastor,
Okay.
and very just like, here's three tips for a biblical marriage kind of guy, and
Okay.
that has its place, but it just never really resonated with me. I'm just more of an not extreme, but I guess like I'm a Scorpio as well. So I like the depth. I want to get
Oh, for
down
sure.
beneath this. There's something, whatever the surface level is just a veneer,
Hmm.
and it has to be deeper than that. So it felt shallow, I think, and no disrespect to my dad, but it felt shallow.
Hmm.
Um, Many people, and very shallow in terms of its spiritual, practice.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I was introduced to a very conservative sort of Christianity that made me, um, really go down this route of getting more and more rigid in my beliefs. And so I spent a few years of time really getting indoctrinated into very strict belief systems, and then given a platform at a young age, because then my dad wanted me to, start stepping. I became a youth pastor at the church, and really was being groomed to be the successor of my dad for this church.
Okay. And I have a quick
Yeah.
question. So
Interject by all means. I'll get on a rabbit trail here. So
no,
yes.
perfect. So, what's the difference between a minister, a pastor, a priest, like those kind of things for those that aren't familiar?
Dude, that's a great question. Yeah, and some of this is inside baseball for me. So yeah, please stop me and help for clarification. So typically they all are the same with a little bit differences. Priests typically are Catholic or Episcopal. Those are branches of Christianity, and they have different qualifications for those, or even like, in a Catholic priest, like they don't get married, different things like that. A pastor is someone who is just like an overseer of a flock of people, i.e., like they are the leadership of a church community.
Hmm.
I use the word minister for me because I feel like pastor is a little played out in this kind of like hyper evangelical world.
Hmm.
I don't, I'm really cautious about using language of Christian pastor, anything like that, or a church, even like, because I've been trying to use it in a subverted way, but people just have all these preconceived notions of what that means.
For sure.
So pastor, while it's fine, I prefer the term minister because the word means servant
Hmm.
in its fundamental form.
Hmm.
So a minister is a servant, and the idea is that whoever is taking on the vocation of minister is one who is a servant of the people, to help, I think, realize divinity within them.
Hmm.
So that's just my bag on that. So
Okay. Okay. I
yeah,
love it. Yeah. Minister makes me think of the Ministry of Magic from Harry Potter.
yeah, man.
There's that lighter aspect to it.
Yeah, and even countries of nations, there's the prime minister, or there's
Right.
the and again, it's just like a servant role is the in its most etymological looking at it. Yeah,
For sure. For sure. Well, thank you for that description.
yeah,
So
man.
so you go to Orlando, you start to it sounds like you're getting kind of following your dad's footsteps. So where did it go from there?
Yeah. So, and to kind of get to the fun part, I think of it here is like I did get very rigid. I did get this platform. I started preaching on the weekends to people three times my age, as if I had some wisdom to give them.
Right.
Um, and just repeating and parroting and regurgitating all of this doctrine and dogma that I was absorbing.
Hmm.
So that's typically the case. So then I felt this nudge to move to San Diego, because I wanted to start a new church here in San Diego. And whenever you're a pastor's kid and you've picked or been called to and surrendered to this path, this calling of ministry, and your dad's a pastor, like there's a very clear trajectory for me. There was a very somebody turned the lights on the hallway of my life, and I just
Hmm.
felt like I didn't want that. We bought a house in Indiana, we had cars, we started having kids, and there was still just this tug. And the only way to kind of, I don't want to say get out of, but kind of low key, like the only way to get out of the situation is, and I did feel a calling, but is to do another noble God ordained calling.
Mm-hmm.
Like I also do some like independent insurance work. Like I wouldn't have been able to say like I'm going to go to San Diego and be an independent insurance agent. Like that
Right.
that doesn't have divine calling on it,
Right.
which
Right.
it can,
It
but
can. It can because it could lead to other things. Yeah, but I
in
hear what
that
you're saying.
culture, they
Right.
don't, it's like, dude, you're supposed to be saving souls from hell, brother. You're
Right.
not supposed to be selling insurance.
Right. Right.
They're both fire insurance anyway.
Yeah.
um Bad dad joke comes in the territory. But
Right.
uh, finally, it took a few years to do that. My dad really didn't want me to move, honestly, because I was kind of his exit plan, I think, in a big way.
Hmm.
We sold our house, sold second car, sold a bunch of stuff. Um, can be a little cheap at times. I rented a moving truck that was too small, so we're giving away stuff on our front lawn, and we come to San Diego, no job, no place to live, nothing, just with this dream of feeling that God is inviting us to start a community here. But I was in the middle of what is call, a lot of Christians understand this term now, deconstruction. It's kind of a buzzword now.
Mm,
But around in this time, 2015, 2016, I was really in the peak of that deconstruction time, which is just taking apart a lot of the faith that I've inherited, and kind of that hard conservative thing that had just cracked open, and I was seeing a lot of the holes in many of that. And truthfully, it just didn't line up with the human experience. Um, it didn't actually carry a particular spiritual weight to it outside of its very particular, dogmatic ideas that it lived in. So
mhm.
um, that was coming apart for me. And we moved to San Diego, and I began to just go through this deconstruction process. And that really teed up my first dark night of the soul. We did try to start a church. We got something going for a few months. And then I just felt the spirit tell me that it was not time for that. And
Mm,
I yielded to that in my heart. And a friend that moved out here with us moved back. I had to try to find another job again, and I just became pretty reclusive for a while. So that was in 2016. So then just ventured then from that point, like Dark Night of the Soul, but also just following my curiosity. I think that's
right.
such a big piece. It's like following the curiosity that led me to letting go of a lot of the things that I thought were the most important thing.
Mhm.
My beliefs about God, myself, the world, other spiritual practices, religion, meditation came into my life at this time. And I still circle back to that as being the most fundamental thing that you like, that is the practice, in my
Mhm.
opinion, is
Mhm.
meditation. It
Right.
begins and ends there. That was the first thing for me, and that's the thing that I come back to.
And that's how we met.
Yes, that's how
Right.
we met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was at a meditation circle that we started during COVID on the beach. So,
Yep. Yeah. So we could fast forward to some of that part. I through a series of time, I ventured deeply into Eastern religion. Then from that point, deeply into reading the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita for the first time, and incorporating the Tao Te Ching. And I know that's a lot to big pendulum swing there, but yeah, progressive Christianity was a part of that too. And then I kind of saw through its fundamentalism also.
mhm.
And then I just kind of have been more in the interfaith, interspiritual landscape for the past, I don't know, 7 years. So
Right on. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. So, was there so you had the Dark Night of the Soul, and then I'm just curious that's when you started to branch out and find these other Buddhism, Vedas, Bhagavad Gita, these kind of things. And
yeah,
that started to kind of pull you out of that, or what really started to get you to the other side of that Dark Night of the Soul?
man, I think like I tell people in our community now, like Dark Nights of the Soul, I feel like the older you get, it's just like you you thought you've been through the one, and then another one will come. And then you realize I'm just surfing these like waves, and you just get better at surfing them each time. You're like, shit, like that's just kind of how it goes. So,
Right.
and every time I think you peel back the layer and you see with a little more clarity. And this is where information and knowledge and an experience begins to turn into wisdom in our life. And
Yeah.
so for me, I think, yeah, from that point in time, just like kind of like massively consuming the big main teachers, I feel like for many in our space now, Alan Watts, Ram Dass, like Krishnamurti, just a lot of that. Richard
Yogananda.
Rohr, Yogananda, yes, of course, Yogananda, and even in my own tradition, Richard Rohr, he's a uh, Catholic priest, Franciscan priest, and he's a father really, and to many of us, and showing us a way that can include our tradition from a more non-dual perspective. And so even guys like, what really first opened me all up was this figure named Rob Bell,
Mm.
and he's an author. He wrote a book called Love Wins back in 2011, and just posed the question, like, yeah, what if if Christians thought there wasn't a hell? What could that be like?
Oh yeah.
And that
That's a
just
good one. That's a
opened
great,
things up,
yeah.
you know? Yeah,
That's a great like perspective to start with, because if that's kind of the foundation of it, there's so much that can be built off of that, you know?
Yeah. And that was the first thing that the House of Cards, that was the first like thread that came out for me was rethinking hell, you
hmm
know.
hmm
So, and it just kind of crumbles from there.
Yeah, I mean, it brings up the thought and the idea that like uh, because our beliefs seem to shape everything in our life, right? For those that believe in existential dread, for example, right? Like, which means like there's nothing, we're just here, we die, there's no spirit, there's no creator, there's nothing else, right? That like does that person actually, is that their reality, right? Like
Right.
when they die, like I wonder, I'm so curious in with these kind of things, right? Like when we die, is where we go somewhat dependent on our belief, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For where our spirit goes, because there's so many beliefs out there, right?
Yeah.
And you know, potentially infinite beliefs, right? Because there can be modifications to all these different branches, right? But yeah, that concept is really fascinating to me. And there's this book called Journey of Souls. Have you heard about it?
Oh yeah, dude. I'm actually reading it right now.
Oh yeah. So that book in particular is fascinating because this psychiatrist, right? He I think he interviews 40 people that have had near-death experiences, and they all across the board share a very, very similar experience of what happens after their soul leaves their body and they're pronounced dead, you know?
And the different maturity levels of those souls and
Right.
sort of the experience. And I think it was like over 40 that were selected from like 700 total like interviews essentially that he
Mhm.
had with these people, you know,
Mhm.
and it's like such a beautiful cohesion of what that is, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that in particular kind of talks to my logical mind, right? Because sometimes my logical mind needs convincing, and then once it's convinced, then everything locks in, you know? And
Yeah.
reading that, like similar to reincarnation, right? Where when I found out about reincarnation, I started, that was like a really key piece of the puzzle for me
Yeah.
because, you know, and I've read that in Christianity in the past, it has been incorporated.
Hmm.
And I don't know when it dropped off of, do you know when they stopped incorporating it?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of it comes from here. Many people don't realize how diverse early Christianity actually was.
hmm
Um, and for many years, there wasn't a quote unquote Christianity, you know,
hmm
there was just this kind of like rogue rabbi who said these very far out statements and then kind of like all these followers making sense of it. But
hmm
there was more denominations then almost than there was now potentially. Um, and so reincarnation is something that isn't as familiar to more of a I'm not Jewish, but from my understanding of Judaism, there isn't as much of that understanding in that tradition as much as there is more in like this what did become, is my mic okay? I don't know what's going on with it, but Neoplatonism and things, you know, in that regard. So, but there was early Gnostics that definitely had an awareness of uh, you know, multiple incarnations for sure.
Yeah, so, I mean the I've mentioned this in previous podcasts, but the story that really like spoke to my logical mind, right, was the one where there was this little boy, I think he was like 2 or 3 years old, and do you know this story where
I
he,
love this one.
oh
Go
my
on.
God,
Your
yeah,
listeners
well,
want to hear it.
yeah, so he basically um was telling his parents, I know how I died in my last lifetime. It was in World War II. I was on this exact plane. It happened in this location, right? And they take him to a World War II veterans meeting, right? And these are guys that are still alive that were part of his platoon when he was in World War II, you know, and they were able to confirm that yes, there was a man that was, you know, on this plane with a very specific mission and very specific number on the plane and everything that he was able to describe. And this little boy, there was no way he could have like gone on the internet or found any of this out.
Right.
He just remembered. And so from that, I was like, wow, this is really convincing. And when I then before all that, there was moments in my life where I would actually see past lifetimes so clearly, and I would ask Spirit, like, please show me, where like why do I feel this way towards this woman, for example, right? And it would show me like a specific lifetime or a specific experience from a lifetime. And I was like, wow, this is really like blowing my mind and shattering, all these beliefs, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's a really interesting thing.
Yeah. 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 I think there's validity to it. I mean, at the end of the day, like I love a devotee once asked his guru, what happens after we die? And he says, you're asking a living one, not a dead one.
Right.
And
Right.
it's like, that's just kind of how it is, or a
Right.
guru or a rabbi. I get those mixed up. Depending on who I'm talking to, I'll use, if I'm talking to somebody that has a Christian background, I'll use rabbi. If I talk to my other friends, I say guru. So it's
Right.
like, kind of the same deal, man. But
Right.
yeah, it's like, yeah, you're asking a living person, not a dead person. And
Right.
so I think with all things, to me, like I hold them openly, but yet whenever I look into the nature of the soul and more of the infinite and eternal thing that's within us, it makes sense that, yeah, of course, this body is a host for a brief period of time. It's the vehicle for the soul to have an experience and to learn and to gather information and to refine and heal, that could only happen if it took incarnation in this organic body. And then whenever it's done with the organic body, it gives it back to the earth, and the soul keeps doing whatever the soul needs to go keep doing,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's really interesting for me to talk about these concepts and these ideas because I mean, those I just brought those up because when my logical mind was able to grasp it, then everything opened up from there, right? Like my spiritual practice got deeper. I was able to start to like certain gifts started to come online,
Mm,
and it was like the logical mind was kind of the doorway for me to step into the more intuitive aspects, and the more um, I guess the deeper spiritual practices,
yeah,
and that was my route. It doesn't mean that it is for anyone else, right? But that was really interesting for me. So you know, it, and nowadays, and we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast. It's like church. The word church has like a negative connotation to it. You have so many of these priests and figures that people look up to and that are meant to be these leaders and spiritual, um, you know, yeah, leaders, right? And
mhm,
and and they're committing these heinous acts and crimes against humanity and kids and all these things. And it's like, whoa, like when did that happen, right? Like when did and so from that energy, a lot of people are like, you know what, like I'm not even gonna go there.
yeah,
And so with that, it's like kind of like shunning out Jesus, but Jesus had nothing to do with any of that.
right,
Jesus was a teacher he was a master. He was a spiritual master that brought such deep teachings to the world. And a lot of people, now that they've had the opportunity to kind of step out of the box, explore these other aspects of religions and spirituality, some people are coming back and being like, you know what? Jesus was speaking such deep truth, and I resonate with the deep truth of his teachings.
mhm,
And so it's like it's forming and creating this new relationship with that spiritual master in particular. And he still, from my understanding, um, Jesus changed, kind of ascended to the next plane, and now is known as Sananda. In the spiritual community, some people refer to him as Sananda. And he also now has placed Saint Germain as the main head of Earth. And
Mhm.
this is an interesting thing because Saint Germain is associated with the violet flame,
Mhm.
and some people believe that he ascended with his body from Mount Shasta in California, and those kind of things. And there's a big um, group out over there called the I Am,
Mhm.
and they believe. I don't know much about that group, but I know that working with the Violet Flame has been really powerful for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good. I do know some about that community and that group. I have a couple friends that have been very involved and a part of that and making treks up there, and they've given me some cool old little vintage literature and stuff too. So
Nice.
super super cool. I think that a few different things that you said, directions we can go, but I feel like when people do hear church and things, many of them do have at this point, a bad taste in their mouth. And I think for really good reasons.
Hmm.
And I think that we've lost the plot in many ways, just because what happens is it gets so caught up in what the group should think or believe. And then also you have people who are placed in leadership, especially at this point, all these years later, kind of like where I was at, it's just regurgitation.
Right.
It's not really true transformation that's taken place, or transformation, depending on how you want to look at it conceptually. It's not really been an authentic uncovering of who you are and allowing that true self to express through wisdom. It's, I'm just doing the preaching plan because this is what we're supposed to reinforce the flock to believe.
Right.
And that's whenever it shows up that they're living a different life behind closed doors,
Right.
and it becomes an act. And Jesus talks about this very explicitly when he's addressing the Pharisees, which I believe that modern Christianity is the Pharisees, truthfully.
Hmm.
And he says that they're whitewashed tombs, that inside they're hollow and empty and full of dead bones, but on the outside they're all adorned and decorated, essentially.
Mm.
And that is, I think, just the human lean, sadly, toward creating a hollow religion means to bind together. That's what the word means, to bind together. And I think at its best, religion binds us together in shared values, different things that we hold as precepts together. This is where Buddhism, it's a philosophy, but it could be called a religion because of its five precepts. It's like, yeah, we agree to do these things, that it binds us together. We're on the same playing field. At its worst, it binds us up inside and clogs up all of the divinity from the spark of divinity that's within all of us.
Right.
It binds that up from its expression.
Hmm.
And so to me, when people are in leadership that have not, and truthfully, I was an example of nepotism, 100%. I fully admit it.
Hmm.
Like I was put in a place of authority and power that I didn't earn. I didn't have the wisdom for, or whatever. It was a strategic play.
Hmm.
And I, at a young age, had an awareness to eject from that, even at the cost of relationships and things. Anyway, not to pedestal myself, but just to say, like, I knew I didn't belong to say that's these things yet, you know?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think that's where Christianity has missed it in a lot of ways in terms of our leaders failing us, is like they're more concerned with like if they can get pictures with Justin Bieber than like if they can actually like help people cultivate the spirit of divinity within them.
Yeah, it's the concept of Maya, right? The illusion of getting lost in the materialism, getting lost in
Right.
these kind of things. And as you were speaking, it made me think about how as a kid, I went to Russian Orthodox church, right?
Hmm.
And we didn't go often, like maybe Christmas and Easter, those kind of things. Those traditions were really nice. We would light a candle, walk around the church at midnight, Well, I didn't like that we would stand the whole time. That was wild to me. But it didn't feel, even at that age, I had this concept of like, where's the expansion from this? Where can, looking back at it now, it's like me searching for an opportunity for self-realization, for that deeper awareness of creator, of spirit, what this reality is really about, and you know, what's possible in this reality. I really wanted that depth. I have some Scorpio in my chart, in my Venus as well. So
Yeah.
there's that depth, right? And that desire for depth. And so I remember the day that I stepped away from the Russian Orthodox Church completely was when I became a Reiki master, and my mom called the priest, and she had him come to the house. He
Mm,
rolls up in this expensive Mercedes, and he brings me outside. He's like, I want to talk to you. And he's like, Peter, Reiki's against our religion.
mm,
And I said, I had a very deep spiritual experience, one of the first in my life, during my Reiki attunement. And my third eye opened up, and I didn't tell him this, but my third eye opened up, and I saw all these symbols and visions and things, and I'm like, that's fine, you, I guess I have to step away now,
mm,
and I don't hold any negative energy or charge towards it. It was just, that was my moment when I was like, you know what? You're telling me that I can't heal myself and help heal others with the energy of the creator and of spirit,
yeah.
and it just didn't make sense to me. It didn't resonate. And after that I said, all right, and I never went back.
Mm,
But I do want to mention there was a really powerful experience. I had one really powerful experience in the church, and that was in a Russian Orthodox church in San Francisco. And I went, and they had, in Russian they call it mochi, moshi. Basically, it's like the bones or hair of somebody who was a saint, like a living person who was sainted, and that held a really high, now in these terms, is like a high vibration, right?
hmm
And I did walk into that church, and something, I felt it. I felt that presence of that saint, and I was
mm,
like, whoa, this is really powerful. Like, I just felt something, right? Like, before that I didn't really feel anything. I couldn't feel the connection to the the statue, or the copper figure of Jesus in front of the church, or I wanted to feel something,
yeah.
and I did. In that moment I was like, wow, okay, this is, and I still can't really put it in words. It was just a feeling and a knowing of this spirit was there, and I don't know if it was because the bones and some of the remains were there, but it was definitely one of those moments that I'll never forget.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful,
Yeah,
and no matter what was actually taking place or not, what was actually taking place is is an awareness within you,
right,
and that's what's the most important thing,
right,
you know.
right.
Yeah. It was powerful for you.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that what's beautiful is that now people are coming back to like asking questions like, why aren't we talking about what Jesus did from 13 to 30, right?
Yeah.
Like, we just talk about how he came back and he started walking on water and healing people with his hands, which is Reiki, you
Right.
know?
Right.
It's like, how are you going to tell me I can't do Reiki when your spiritual teacher brought this to your religion, right? Like,
Oh
it,
yeah.
that blows my mind. But yeah, he was doing all these miraculous things, right? And so from the extensive studies that you have, and from the deeper, diving into the different religions and books and things like that, what was where was Jesus in those times?
Yeah, man.
Where'd he go?
So definitely a few things I will riff on that for sure. And I think to your point though, Jesus wouldn't be accepted in many churches today because we wouldn't recognize him anymore. The
Such a
practices,
trip, right?
yeah, the practices that we hold as valuable and important were not what he found valuable and important. And it's just, yeah, we wouldn't recognize that in the same way they didn't recognize his Christ means anointing. That's what that means. And that's an ancient practice that was for priests, for kings, for people that had a calling on their life. And we all have that, you know. We all have the anointing, the Christ within us. But we we don't value those things. They didn't recognize that in him then. They wouldn't recognize it now, and that's why whenever you had a real transformation with Reiki, it wasn't recognized. It was
Right.
that can't be in this space where I can manipulate and control what your experiences are and aren't.
Mm-hmm.
There's an authority and a power and an autonomy that you were expressing.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes people feel uncomfortable in the same way Jesus rocked his institution because they're like, they can't control it. And when people can't control something, they kill it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came to kill that in you. And then what they did to Jesus, they nailed him on a cross because they couldn't understand and they couldn't control and manipulate it. So that's my little riff on that, just as
Yeah.
a
No, that's
segue. But
great. I love it.
the lost years of Jesus are ones that are really fascinating. And I, growing up, you're not exposed to any other philosophy. It's just like Jesus is born of a virgin birth, and then as a kid he seems to kind of know a lot of things, and he's teaching teachers at 12 years old in the temple, and then you see him come back on the scene at age 30 and doing all this far out stuff. A few different things about it. One is that I love exploring how there is potentially artifacts and information. Yogananda here, down the street in Encinitas. I love going to Self Realization Temple there. Yogananda was pretty certain about Jesus going to India, and I think there's cases to be made for that for sure, and I think that there's some validity to that. There's also some cases that are made that he went other directions also, which is pretty wild. You see him potentially going up into like Northern Europe, even into like modern day England and things like, so it's like you're trying to reconcile, like, how is this person in all these different places,
Right.
I don't know what that looks like, but or even in Japan, like there's some things there for him too. And um, I think that um, where I've come to, I made a video on YouTube years ago that I believed that the lost years of Jesus, he was in India, and that video did well or whatever. That's where I was at the time. And since then, I feel like I I'll explain more, but it doesn't matter to me, and I'll tell you
Mm.
why.
Okay.
Doesn't matter because it's not necessarily about proving where he was or where he wasn't if he's
Right.
not here and now.
Right.
If the
Right.
Christ, if the infinite eternal presence of being is not realized here and now, then everything else becomes hurdles to jump over to that is.
Mm.
And if
I like that.
my focus and intention is to help people reconcile within their own being, their fractures, and realize their innate wholeness
Mm-hmm.
and learn how to express that divinity, to some people, it's liberating and freeing to realize that Jesus was in India. To other people, it bottles them up and they put me in the Yogananda camp and they're like, oh, that weird, whatever. Like, there can't, we don't have a lot of ability for paradox within us naturally as humans until we start to move more into maturity. We can hold tension with paradoxes and be okay.
Right.
And so, depending on where people are at, I think is depending on how important it is or not. I think what's important to me is that I'm open to that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's fun. And I will get on deep YouTube rabbit trails about it
Right.
for way too late into the night. I
Right.
think it's really cool and definitely a possibility. But I also have to hold the openness of like, that could also just be fantasy as well. And
Mm-hmm.
and what I want to be in is ultimate reality. So Also, I'll just make another mention as well on this note is that the early accounts of Jesus being born of a virgin, and even the one account of him, his parents taking him to Egypt and coming back, and even that symbolizing, Moses and the Exodus and all of this. The truth is, from a scholarly perspective, which isn't as fun for my woo woo self that I like to live in most of the time, to be truthful with you,
Right.
like the scholarship shows that we really don't have any concrete evidence before the sayings of Jesus that came in his ministry.
Hmm.
Like, we really don't have a lot of great evidence that shows us who he really was before this time. And even a lot in our earliest gospel, which is the Gospel of Mark, which is likely a copy of a gospel that scholars call Q, and that's where you get the synoptic gospels, which is Mark, Matthew, and Luke. They're all kind of following a same narrative. Some expound more than others. They seem to all be following some rubric that was given before them. And even the Gospel of Thomas, which I think is valid and should be canonized scripture, which we can talk about that if you want to.
What
But
does canonized mean?
official, like
Oh, okay.
church recognized, this
Oh, okay.
is ordained, this isn't. So canonical, non canonical.
Hmm.
So if you go to just like order a Bible on Amazon, that's going to be a canonical Bible,
Hmm.
For the extra biblical things, you'll have to buy them individually. But just on the note of Jesus, I think that what we really know about him is actually like bizarringly, if that's even a word, we can make it right now, I guess, like minimal of what we truly know about
Right.
him, his life, what he said. And a lot of it is fabricated and narrative and what we choose to believe through our tradition and stuff that was passed down to us. So I think
Mhm.
we have to hold that with humility and with openness.
For
And I
sure.
think at the best, it keeps us open to not to being so dogmatic, to being
Right.
open to the flow of the spirit.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, that it's really for me. I find a lot of I find a lot of solace in thinking about how Jesus traveled and learned all kinds of things from all kinds of walks of life, from all different masters, right?
Yeah.
And there is, with the teachings of Yogananda Paramahansa, there's at the Lake Shrine, there's a temple in LA. There's actually a woman who can take you to India and show you the different locations where there's potentially proof that he was there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the term Siddhi, Siddhi, means uh, like a spiritual gift, right? And that term is what could be labeled for the things that Jesus could do,
Mm,
right? Like one of his siddhis is that he could walk on water. Another
yeah.
siddhi is he could heal with his hands. Another siddhi is he could bring people back to life, and the list goes on, right? And so for me, it's interesting to think about how potentially he went to Egypt, potentially he went to Nepal, Tibet, India. That whole it makes sense that you know if he was on horse or mule or whatnot, he could get to those places within a year. Um,
Yeah. The
and
Silk Road was a very popular trade route too, that he could have
right,
easily, yeah.
yeah, and I don't know, exactly how long it takes to get there, but no more than 2 years. And let's say he got over there and took these different stops. Like to me, it makes sense from my logical mind, like we are talking about, right? That he would study under these different masters, and then they would show him and teach him. I mean, if you look at you know the different relics, right? In church and on even in the glass, the stained glass, he's holding up different mudras,
Yeah.
and why? How is he holding up mudras? Why? Right? Like in in Judaism, they don't hold up mudras, right?
Right.
I don't think they do,
Not from
right?
my understanding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not from my understanding, but in India they do,
Yeah.
right? Like, and he holds up all different kinds of mudras and all these different things. And across the different uh, branches of Christianity, right? Like that's
Yeah.
one thing that you see across pretty much all of the different Christian branches. In Russian Orthodox Church, you'd see all of his different saints also holding up mudras, and if I also think about how the Bible was not written by Jesus. It was
Right.
written by other people that a group of people, right? That came together to write about his life. And then think about all the like what over 2000 years, 2025 years since this man was on earth in his physical body, right? How much could have been shifted and pages ripped out and republished and
Hmm.
manipulated so that we could be more subservient as a race, right?
Totally.
And
And that's what
and
happened, by the
right,
way. Yeah.
right, right. And so to me, it's like the book you get on Amazon isn't the true teachings, right? And I mentioned to you before the podcast, there's this book called A Way of Mastery, which I really resonate with, which is this woman who channels Jesus and channels his true teachings of love and unity and these really deep ways that when I read it, I'm like, this feels like what Jesus was really trying to teach,
Yeah.
and it feels really pure and really like the core, like the distilled, titrated things that he was really trying to bring to the world. And I couldn't imagine being at the frequency that he was at and being so awakened and coming back to people 2025 years ago and being like, hey, this is what I learned. And with the level of consciousness that people were at, it would be so overwhelming for the nervous system,
Yeah.
even for a lot of people now. It's like these topics and these deep aspects of the true teachings are really difficult for people to grasp, right? And it's like there's this joke, right, where it's like, oh, just do the thing and then you can repent afterwards, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, no, that's not it, right? It's like we live by a certain way so that we can actually help others
Yeah,
and
man.
show up for others and be good, be actually really good people and not use religion as a blanket to like do all these things and be like, oh no, I went to the priest and told him my sins and I'm forgiven. It's like,
Right.
come on,
How
man.
transactional. I
Right,
mean, and I think that the divine is deeply intimate, and I've been married 15 years, and it would not work if it was transactional. It just
right.
doesn't go that way. We're very mechanical in the West, and
Hmm.
cause and effect and whatever. And it's like, yeah, do whatever the fuck you want, but as long as you do your, confessions or whatever, it's like righteousness means in accordance with. That's what that word means. So if you're living righteousness, you're wanting to live in accordance with the pattern of divinity. That doesn't mean just like going and asking for forgiveness in ways that you knew that you're doing some wrong shit to begin with. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
that's not righteousness then because you knew. So yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it brings up the topic of karma, right? Where it's like
Yeah.
even if you're going to the priest, there's a good chance that if you did something wrong or did something good, the karma's there. It's
Right.
going to come around one way or another, if not in this lifetime, maybe in the next one, or it'll affect your kids or your loved ones, It's
Yeah.
like it's got to be resolved in one way or another. And that was another big thing for me. That word karma, when I really opened up and started to explore that, it really started to shift things for me because it was like, okay, how can I just how can I clear that for one thing, right? Like
Yeah.
who do I need to find forgiveness for and
Mm.
with? And then once I've found forgiveness for others, how can I find forgiveness for myself for putting myself in those situations or not having control, being too young to have any type of say in these situations that happen, right? And then finding compassion, right? Finding compassion for myself and for others in those positions, and what did they have to go through, and what programs were they playing out from their ancestors, and how long does down the line is this been present for them, that they had to resort to violence or to these things that are part of the seven sins, right?
Mm.
And it's like, you know, from that place, it was very empowering, and it gave me my power back, and I was
Yeah.
like, from here, I I can take full accountability for all the things that have happened in my life, because there's a part of me that believes that my soul chose these experiences for me to be where I am now. And if any of them were any different, I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Well said, and I couldn't agree more. I mean, because karma means action, right? Like that's
Mhm.
it's your actions in life and what you do, and then also the actions that happen to you and how you're in responding to that and the yin and yang of it all. Like that's how it works, and that's how refinement happens, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean bringing it back a little bit, rewinding it to why I brought up even the topic of where Jesus was in that time, right? Is because I believe Jesus was here to show everyone what was possible as a human.
Yeah.
And so going to these different places, traveling, learning from different masters and teachers, and opening up our mind to what other people are believing and looking into, and those kind of things, I think that expands our soul and expands our viewpoint of this reality, and of breaking out of that 9 to 5 box of like, okay, you're a slave to the system, and you only have to do it this way so that somebody up the line can get really wealthy, and it
Mhm.
and that kind of goes across the board. It's like some of these priests and things are just undercover CEOs, like you
Yeah.
were saying, where they're just sometimes looking at it for the money and those kind of things. But where is the depth? And not to say that miracles and these amazing transformations don't happen, right? It's that it can also happen in so many limitless other ways,
Hmm.
from me, from my experience, it wasn't happening, and I wasn't having those depths that I was really looking for, and so my spirit and my soul kind of guided me to explore other things, but now where I'm at is like Jesus is one of my spiritual teachers. It's like I can't deny that there's no denying for me that Jesus is definitely a spiritual master, and up there, you know, on the altar. And it's just the relationship has shifted from
Mm.
this relation to the church and this manipulation to a true spiritual master that came to really, really shift the world and show people how they can become like him, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. Jesus didn't come to start a religion, he came to show you the way.
Right.
And that is a much different thing. The key thing that Jesus taught about was what he called the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven.
Hmm.
And this is a divine dimension of reality that's in our midst,
Hmm.
within us and among us and around us, and it's coming and it's here now, and all these different language that he uses. It's a potential that's here for all of us to tap into. Jesus, yeah, it's he wasn't. I love how Alan Watts, once said, it's like, yeah, he gets the privilege of being the boss's son. It's
Right.
like,
Right.
of course, you'll never be him.
Right.
That's not what Jesus was saying. He says, you'll do even greater works than me. And I don't even necessarily think, in my charismatic upbringing, that's evidence that we need to be stepping into the miracles and doing those things. And I've seen those things happen, and I have seen some trippy things happen. And it's never whenever I was trying to manipulate and force them to happen. It
Right.
was always whenever I was in a posture of openness, and the element of surprise was there most of the time, honestly.
Right.
But like that you would do greater things. in terms of, it's not about the things and it's not about the externals. It's about the inner posture of the heart of union with the divine that manifests itself in whatever way is right for it to manifest itself. In Jesus' incarnation, it was right to break out of empty, rigid religion in this way and to open up people's awareness to who they were as God's beloved. That was what was right for that moment in time. To take whatever was right then and now assume it to be right now, that's not being attuning your antenna to the presence of divinity that wants to express that's right for this moment. And so even like in my charismatic world back in like the 80s and stuff, there was a big emphasis on healing and physical healings and things. And today people try to do that and it feels forced and it feels whatever, and people don't see much. You find the charlatans really quickly and whatever. And it's like, why can't we just accept that maybe that's not what the divine is up to right now in this moment in time? I think what the divine is up to right now, I tend to believe that, we are in this middle ground of time right now, this liminal space between 2020 and 2027. And I think that 2020 was the kickoff when me and you met. You and
Right.
I met.
Right.
That was the kickoff of old systems falling away.
Hmm.
And we are in the preparing of new systems coming into order. Some of those are very malicious and evil, and some of them are very freeing. And whatever idea of new earth you have, I think might be real.
Right.
And I think it's like this is the sort of liminal 7 year space. Seven is a strategic number for completion, right? It
Hmm.
takes 7 years, 7 days in a week. It's in Old Testament, the year of Jubilee was a 7 year period of time. Like there's this regeneration that's happening, and we're right little past the middle of it now.
Hmm.
And we are yeah, I do think that what Jesus was doing was showing you what's possible, but you have to have that discernment of understanding what that manifestation looks like in your incarnation.
For sure.
It's not just that you would walk on water and
Right.
people go, yay, he walked on water.
Right. No,
You
it's
know,
not about that.
it's not about that. It's always about bringing back into union and whatever ways is necessary for that to take place. So for even those listening, how is the divine preparing you for this new unveiling that is happening in this moment in time? To be prepared for however God wants to express through your incarnation. That's what we're opening ourselves up towards in
Right.
this era of human history, in my opinion. So
Absolutely. And it's 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 moving so fast,
yeah,
and these aspects of self are opening up in so many ways that are for me unpredictable.
yeah,
Like what is happening as we're evolving as a human race, what's actually possible for us to to be as a human. And it's not. I really like that you emphasize that it's not about the siddhis that he activated, right? It's not
right,
about those gifts. The gifts are actually a deterrent. It's like my teacher would say the gifts are going to come. Don't pay them any attention. Keep going. Don't get stuck because the ego, that's another way for the ego to kind of suck you back and make you, like a circus clown, right? Like, hey, I
yep,
can do this thing. No, it's like keep going because it's leading you to something bigger, something greater, something of purpose, something of real meaning, you know?
yes, yes,
And for everybody that's going to look different, you know?
yeah.
You brought up the idea of the kingdom that he teaches about, that Jesus teaches about. And I'm curious if you think there's any correlation between the kingdom and New Earth or the 5D, the fifth dimension that we talk about in the spiritual community. Do you think that he may have been referring to something like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think in a very archaic, ancient Near East way with the language and culture and understanding that he had,
Hmm.
it's this infinite possibility, this realm, this divine dimension of reality. Even in my like, you know, Orthodox ministry training to be an ordained preacher or whatever, like that we use this language of the kingdom as God's rule and reign. And I think if you understand that, it's like there is a dimension of that of spirituality that can transmute and transform what we understand in the material. And I think quantum physics and all of this thing is all just affirmation that that is true. That's
Hmm.
why Jesus' prayer is on earth as it is in heaven. Heaven doesn't mean some far off place when you die where all your ancestors are hanging out necessarily.
Hmm.
Heaven means in that Greek, the Aramaic, the sky above. So it is this ether that's here that
Hmm.
you have access to, that you can pull from and bring into manifestation that's in the spiritual meaning just in its fundamental meaning unseen.
Hmm.
You can bring what is seen from the unseen. And so whatever sort of fifth dimension people are operating from, I think it first has to like understand like what is the source of that and what are we bringing through, because even in our spiritual communities and spaces, I think some of it has been hijacked a little bit by our own, desires. and
Hmm.
and even like you're saying with the cities, like it's like you now whatever it is, it's we cling and we grasp and it's mine,
Right.
and it's my special gift that I have.
Right.
Or being able to be a person who operates in the 5D, it's clinging to I'm the one who operates in 5D,
Right.
and all of these 3D people down here
Right. All these
messing
muggles.
everything up. You're right. And
Right.
now it's like you're caught, dude. You are
Right.
caught in samsara again.
Right.
And the minute that you're caught, the quickest thing you can do is you don't have to deal with guilt or shame. You let it go.
Hmm.
You just let it go. So anyways, yeah, I think Jesus was speaking in his way of, the infinite, even as like David Lynch. I love the memes on Instagram where it's like, me 5 minutes into a party and it's like beneath the waves, the infinite flow of conscious. It's
Right.
like I do think that's what Jesus meant with the kingdom, a divine dimension of rule and reign that is available, that when you invite that to take root and to take shape in your life, it does have the potential to transmute what we perceive to be reality. You know,
Beautiful. Beautiful, man. Well, it's been such an honor to have you on. I'd love to do a part two. So we'll schedule that out and we can, I think we got a lot more we can talk about. So I think
dude, so much.
we just started to skim the surface. So thank you so much for coming on, Luke. It's been such a pleasure to have you on, and you're welcome back anytime, and we'll do a part two for sure.
Let's do it. I want to talk about the exorcism thing, my friend.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, man. Until next time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.